This is my brain that I have molded. You can see the latex is inside of it. It is completely dry now. This is actually not the same one that you watched me pour. This is a different one. The magic of video. I am baby powdering the inside because latex, when dry, will stick to itself. So, by putting a layer of talcum powder on the inside of it, it won't stick to itself. Pulling these is fairly easy. The easiest way to do it is just very gently, because you don't want to break off any plaster. Work around, and if you know what it is of, if you know what the sculpt is, then you should know where the undercuts are and where it's going to give you trouble. This one didn't really give me any trouble. There is a brain. Now it is free from the mold. Latex brain. I'm going to finish it out real quick by painting it. For that, I will need some paints. And I'm also going to make a little display out of it. You can see that all the detail that was in the sculpt came out in the mold. We have around the bottom a little bit of flashing, which is stuff that I don't necessarily need, and I can trim that off. I don't need to for what I'm going to use this brain for. Just little bits of flesh, so I don't mind that at all. Painting it, I want to base it first in a dark color. Then I'm going to dry brush a lighter color over top of that. So because this is fairly organic, black would be a bit too dark, so I'm going to mix up a brown in order to base it out. I mix most of my own colors. These are just acrylic craft paints. Not a big deal what kind you use. The same kind I use for airbrushing is normally what I use for prop painting. Unless it's something that has to flex and move a lot. I know that a prop brain doesn't have to flex and move. If I wanted something that was going to be flexible, like for a mask, then I would mix up paint out of latex house paint, because that is meant to flex with the house as it gets hot and cold. Right here I have some red and green in here, and I'm going to mix that up, and that will give me a brown. Anytime you have two colors that are opposite on the color wheel, mixing them together will give you brown. A slightly different brown. That is the color that I just mixed, red and green. I might have to dry brush later, but latex has a color very close to skin already. Brains are called gray matter, and they're kind of gray. I'm going to keep that in mind, but I'm not going to go so gray that it looks unnatural. To my paint, I'm going to wet it down quite a bit with just some water to get a really thin paint. And I want to mix it really well. I'm going to check it for how well it's mixed on the side of the cup, because I can see the big flecks in there when it's not mixed very well on the edge of that cup. Let's keep it mixed. Okay, now I can see it's mixed pretty well, and it's actually a pretty good thickness for what I want to. And I'm going to, not very neatly, paint this all over the head. This is a painting technique where it does not hurt me when I am sloppy, which is good for me because I normally get paint everywhere. And again, I want to make sure that this goes down into all of the nooks and crannies and crevices that this brain has. Obviously, paint in an area that you're not too worried about. And I'm just getting this everywhere. I want to jab where I need to jab to make sure it gets down in those holes. I remember the deep parts of the sculpt because I sculpted it. I'm going to make sure that my brush gets to them and gets them darker. Okay, stage 1 of paint looks like that. Stage 2, going to take off a lot of that paint that I just put on. I'm just wiping it off with a rag, a dry rag. Now, what I have done is I have highlighted all the high spots by making them lighter than the low spots. So now I can really see a lot more contrast than I used to in that. Because I've got a brown base, it's fairly organic, and it shows a little bit of life. If I use straight black, this would be a dead brain, just from looking at it. I'm now going to use a little bit of this purple color. I'm just going to put it down, grab a second brush, and I'm going to dry brush this, because while this is a good organic look, a 2-color paint job, I'm using the color of latex and the color of paint, normally isn't enough to sell something. You really need to have 3 colors on something, I think, to call it a paint job. I'm getting most of the paint off of the brush, and I'm just going to dry brush over top, and the purple blending with the brown. It's going to give me a much more organic look than just this side. Side on the left looks a little bit like a brain. Side on the right looks a little bit like a brain. Side on the left, spaghetti. So I want to get away from spaghetti by going with this purple color. And this is actually blending. I should let the brown dry, but I rush things. That's just how it goes. Lots of people are better painters than me. I can do everything to a level where I get it done well enough. Certainly, there are others who do it better. That's a brain. I'm going to lighten up this purple a little bit with a bit of cream. White is normally very stark, so I avoid using white. I very rarely use straight white on almost anything. I'm just going to hit the highest of these spots to give a little more life and contrast and depth to the brain. That's it. I call that sucker painted. A fresh brain is going to have some blood around it. That would be good. What I'm going to do now is set this sucker up so I can just drop it off and put it in my lab scene, morgue scene, whatever.